Hey yo, welcome to episode 2 of Limitless. In this episode, we will be making a sign for my brother's cottage. It is inspired by the signs found at our wonderful national parks. I didn't capture much video during the process, so for my future videos, I will work on keeping the cameras rolling. This sign starts out with a good old-fashioned glue up. Here we are doing maple and walnut. I used my joiner for the straight joints and then cut the curves into the transition pieces with the CNC. After dry fitting everything, I applied an excessive amount of glue and clamped it all tight. Here I am testing out Purple Heart for the sky in the background. Once dry, I flattened the back side of the sign on the CNC and then used my new diode laser to engrave my signature into the back. This is such a handy little laser. I designed this all in CAD and then programmed the pocket cuts in CAM. Because the letters have tight internal radii, I used an 1/8 inch end mill to cut the contours. The matching inlays were cut from thin stock of the contrasting woods with my laser. I have had this old CO2 tube laser from China for over 10 years now. I then glued the laser cut letters into the machined pockets to create the inlays. While the CNC was cutting the S in Powell's, the X-axis coupling broke. This made a real mess of the sign, and I momentarily thought I would have to start over. After a few minutes of clarity, I realized I could inlay a patch into the walnut. I figured a square was too boring, so I decided to do a bluegill shape. I finished inlaying all the contrasting woods, packed all the joints with sawdust, and cut the outer perimeter most of the way through. I then did my first flattening pass, and things were starting to look pretty good. I finished cutting the perimeter with a jigsaw and flush trimmed it with a router. I finished the emblem off with the laser and engraved some trees and an eagle, as well as an elk. Things were really starting to come together now. I made a roof out of oak I had laying around for the sign to hang from and to add protection from the elements. I did the first pour of UV resistant epoxy on the backside and everything went really smoothly. After curing, I flipped the sign over and did a pour on the front. Just like on the back, the bubbles all popped quickly and things were looking good. However, as the epoxy began to cure, more and more bubbles started surfacing from underneath the Powells. It slowly became apparent that air was trapped and making its escape as it warmed up. The epoxy began to solidify as I was frantically popping bubbles, and in a last-ditch effort, I scraped the epoxy off the problem area. I thought this was the end of the road for me, but I let the epoxy cure and did another pour, which hid all my mistakes flawlessly. Here is the finished sign hanging from the roof. I think it turned out great. Stay tuned for the next episode.